everybody. Thank you so much for tuning back into the third episode of the Rock Bottom Podcast. We're your hosts, Dom and Kels. We're back here again, and we're so excited to see you back in the podcast.
Absolutely. If you're here, thank you so much. Once again, we appreciate the support. We've been getting comments coming in saying that they love the podcast and they're inspired and they want us to keep going. But I've been getting story after story. I've had a numerous amount of people reach out and tell me that they also have been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, that they're also struggling with the same things we've mentioned. So that's exactly what we wanted to do. We wanted to relate to people, to bring a community in. So I'm happy we're achieving that. I'm not happy to hear some of the traumatic stories I've heard, but I am happy that y'all have felt comfortable enough to trust me with that information, to reach out, to build us up, to support the podcast. We really appreciate that. It's been shocking. It's been great to not great that those things are happening, but great that people are comfortable enough to speak up about it. I feel like trauma is always looked down upon, and like you're dramatic if you talk about it, or you're dramatic if you say you have a disorder. I'm just glad that we're not listening to those stigmas. We're comfortable enough to speak up, and that's really something, this podcast, that we want to bring people. So
absolutely, and that's huge. That's like one of the first steps you can really do in overcoming something is to be vocal and be upfront about it. And I know from personal experience that's not easy. You think you have it all figured out. You think, oh, it'll never, something
won't do it on your own.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not. You need other people. You need support. That's why we are driving the concept of community, because having someone behind you and having someone that can relate to you is just it's huge.
It's key. I would say it's in the top 5 to 10 key things that you need, or key elements you need to grow, to get through your healing journey. And if you're struggling finding your community and struggling, I know I have struggled with that, especially I've struggled with relationships all my life and friendships all my life, and that's a common symptom of a borderline personality disorder. But that being said, I know what it is to struggle with relationships. I know what it is to struggle with friendships and to find your community and feeling alone and feeling isolated. So if you're struggling with that, don't lose hope. You can absolutely get through your healing journey alone, especially if if everyone in your path is just bringing you down and not helping your healing journey. It's better to do it alone and drop those people than it is to keep around toxic people.
Absolutely.
But to have that element of fellowship and community from the right people is really big.
Just also want to reiterate that we are going to be opening up Discord servers as well. We are going to be opening up more chat rooms.
I want to do like live in-person meetups. I want to do like activities. I want to do, if you can't, maybe we can set up Zoom type situations or Discords, like you said. So yeah, we really want to get people connected.
We're here to push the concept that, we as an interconnected nation and world is so much more productive, and
unity.
Unity is just so beautiful.
Better together, if you've heard it like that.
1,000%.
We want to tie people together and be able to have the freedom to be who you are and believe what you believe, or have your opinions, but don't lose that unity. You know what I mean? I think it gets so misconstrued sometimes that if you have different opinions, or if you're from different backgrounds, or whatever the case is, that you can't still be united and you can't still be better together. And I think that's a lie. I think that's, to jump into relevant topics and maybe conspiracies as well, I think that's a huge theme not only our country but the world implements, is dividing us.
Absolutely. And just really coming back to the initial point, I just wanted to say that we don't measure our success with how famous or how big we get as a podcast or how many views and likes we get. We really just want to drive the concept of community, and that's how we measure our success, is the stories we hear from you, and the feedback we also receive, and anything we can do to really push our message out there is going to be the driving point for us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think we're already hitting a lot of that, and so I feel fulfilled. Absolutely. I feel like we're doing what we've intended to do. People are reaching out, people are connecting, people are, inspired, and that alone, I did not think it was going to happen within the first 2 episodes. That's crazy. And I already feel fulfilled with where we're at. It's awesome.
I agree. Could not
People
agree more.
I didn't expect to pull up the podcast have.
To further push that, we also want to break down the societal norms with people following us back or
Mm-hmm.
us following other people. There's really this concept that we have to have more followers than we are following. We want
Yeah.
to break down that and stop that
Such a dumb
altogether. It
construct,
really is.
honestly.
We want to show the community that we are going to follow everybody
Mm-hmm.
back, that we are going to do more than enough to make everybody feel included in our journey as well.
Yeah, we want to connect with you. We want to see what's going on in your life. We want to see the state that you're in. And our intention is to relate and connect with you and build community. So, of course, we're going to follow everybody back that follows us.
And I just want to also reiterate that we are also breaking down a lot of other societal boundaries as well,
Mm-hmm.
especially when it comes
And
to
stigmas.
it's the stigmas, yeah, especially
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to political stances and political conversations. We definitely feel like a lot of people will probably click off when we go into like politics or we go into something that might seem heavy, but we really want to say that.
There's a weird stigma around getting too political,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. And we really just want to break down that don't be too political
Yeah.
stance because that's our livelihood. And also to add on, me growing up in what seemed like a very political household as well. My mom and my aunts were very Democrat, very left wing. And my grandparents were the other way. They were right wing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure I'm not the only one. Like, we all grew up with families that were very heavy one way in one area of the family and have one very heavy the other way in the other area of the
Mm-hmm.
family. And on a bigger scale, we see that politics can really affect families, and it almost seems like a red herring where they want to look
Mm-hmm.
at politics as a confliction
Yeah.
within a family. It really doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
It can just be something as a casual conversation, a bouncing of ideas back and forth. And yeah, just really tying it in, I just want to say that we can eliminate this stigma of
Yeah.
negative views on politics.
Don't bring that up. It's, oh, they're getting political. We're going to talk about relevant topics and what's going on, and we might as well just be talking about bread and games if we're not going to talk about real world issues. We're going to talk about, if we're talking about, we want to be real with y'all, and we want to have a real podcast that's genuine, that rips off the icing, I guess you could say. We're going to be real about mental health, and so therefore we're going to be real about what's happening in our world.
So yeah, we see politics really break down families.
Yeah.
I know in from personal experience that when Trump got elected, my family split right down the middle.
Mm-hmm.
We
It was
It
bad,
was a
right?
rough time.
Yeah.
Like we weren't sure if the family was going to pull through it. And I already know that's what government wants.
Mm-hmm.
They want us to think we're not going to stick through this and be together as a family because
They want people divided.
they
They
want
want
people divided.
families
They want
divided.
division, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Because they know the more that they are arguing with each other,
Mm-hmm.
the more they can do behind our backs.
Yeah, like you said, it's a red herring.
It's a red
Yeah.
herring, absolutely. And my grandfather has planted that seed in my mind ever since I was a kid. He's like, always make sure you're looking at the bigger picture.
Yeah,
Always make
absolutely.
sure that you're not feeding into the little things and just literally look at the bigger picture.
Yeah, I promise that there's always a bigger picture. And I think people forget that like they think that what's in our face and what's happening on the news right now is the whole picture, and it's just not. There's always a bigger picture. The stuff that they're publishing on the news, they've probably been talking about for 5 years already, like type stuff, you know what I'm saying? I feel like we're so late to everything we find out. The politicians know like 10 years in advance, you know. Anyway,
It's
but
a game of power moves
yeah,
and counter moves.
plan, control.
Conquer. But yeah, speaking of families not being able to like really see the bigger picture, we can honestly go right into like censorship and how that really
Yeah.
affects what we're able to say to each other and on social media, because
That's huge.
That's huge. That's the key. That's gonna be the key in this dilemma as well.
Media is such a huge part of agenda, and I don't know if some of you saw this week what happened to my account, but I actually reposted it, and I was vocal about the fact that Facebook took one of my posts down, and it literally was just a screenshot of the pod, and it was saying, please, it was saying, go watch, go check it out, blah, blah, blah. And even in the screenshot, it said in the description, oh, this is just opinions, disclaimer, conspiracies, blah, blah, blah. And even with all that being said in the screenshot, my post got taken down off of Facebook because I don't even know. It said something about me trying to get views for misinformation or something like that. And I had already stated in the pod, in the description and everything, that it's an opinion, this is our thoughts, this is just a conversation, a podcast. And I still got my post taken down. And that happening to me this week not only lit a fuse off in me, but reminded me how prevalent censorship is in our social media nowadays. And I want to remind all of you, I think everyone's forgotten that we censorship on social media is that thing where it's like fact checkers, you get that pop-up and it's like, are you sure you want to view this? This is misinformation. All those pop-ups you get on people's stories, on people's posts now, that was not a thing until the 2020 pandemic with coronavirus.
Oh, for sure.
When people started talking about the vaccine and their opinions and how a lot of people thought it was control, a lot of people thought it was genuinely just a pandemic that broke out. When those posts started coming out, that is right when that censorship for social media started happening. We used to be free to say whatever we wanted, and now it's censored. Now our posts get taken down if it's misinformation, if they think it's misinformation, or you get flagged, you get pop-ups on your post saying this is not true, blah blah blah. Yeah. That was not a thing 5 years ago. And I think we forget. And I would like to bring up the dog collar analogy. There's this analogy that I think clearly and directly describes what's happening to American citizens. And it's, you imagine a dog has a chain link collar on and it's almost as big as a necklace. It's hanging off his neck. He's free to move his head as much as he wants. He can look everywhere, and that chain could almost even fall off because it's so loose. But the owner every day removes one singular chain link from that collar, and every day removes another one, just every day. And I promise you that dog is not going to fight back their owner on that when they're just releasing one a day or taking one a day. But that collar is going to get tighter and tighter and tighter until the point where the dog can't even move its neck anymore. It can't turn its head, and it's actually in pain from that tight collar. That being a direct, clear analogy for what's happening to America's citizens.
Of our freedom.
Yes, they are inching away at our freedom, and I think America is not realizing it. I think we're so much closer to a really, really scary America than people are willing to admit or realize. I saw an article the other day that said there are 6 companies controlling 90% of our media. 6 companies controlling 90% of our media.
That doesn't even make sense.
And that should scare you as much as it scares me.
Scholars have researched that when people face uncertainty and crisis, they will actually run to mass media for information.
Of course. Where else are we going to go?
Yeah, absolutely. And when they do that, when they're looking for that media, when they're looking for that news source, and it's being controlled by something else, if it's 6 companies, if it's being censored all that as well, I can only imagine what people, I like to call them sheep, because not people, and that's not, I know that's kind of got a bad connotation to it, but if you think about it, people don't take the time to actually fact check articles and fact check what they're reading. They just see it in a news article, they see it online, and they're like, oh my goodness, and now they're telling their friend, they're telling their families, and they're freaking out, and it causes hysteria.
Yeah.
So we really have to make sure that we're putting our big brain on and diving into the actual truth when it comes to our sources.
It's huge, yeah. I was taught something good that I took from my religious background is that I was taught growing up to always fact check, your pastor. So to always fact check, go back, make sure that's what the Bible says. So that's something I took from my childhood into my adulthood because I fact check everything. I will say I'm guilty, and I admit I have maybe I've shared a post or I've told people things that I realized later weren't true and it was just a post. So I'm guilty of that. I think in this day and age, with how heavily we are censored and how much the media is controlled, it's really hard to not get trapped in that trap. Well, that's exactly where they want us. And if you've done that, I'm guilty of it. I don't think that makes you, stupid or something. I think we have been getting more and more brainwashed as time goes on, and if you've fallen victim to that, I'm sorry, because that's exactly what they want had to happen, and going back to my background, I was just trying to say that it's huge to fact check. You've got to make sure that what you're reading is true. You've got
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that even when I don't even believe the fact checker things, the little pop-ups that it's like this isn't true. I'm like, yes it is. Like, I've
Mm-hmm.
researched this and this is literally true, and Instagram is trying to tell me that this is misinformation.
Yep.
That's crazy to me. That's crazy. So not only are posts spreading misinformation that you just believe at the surface, but the fact, quote unquote, fact checkers, the little pop-ups from Instagram, from Meta, which controls several social media sites, by the way, is popping up with their own misinformation, saying
Mm-hmm.
this isn't true when it is.
Absolutely. And it's, just really honing in on you talking about misinformation. My grandfather also told me that when I was growing up, he was right alongside me in my educational upbringing, and he would look at my history books and be like, I lived in this time,
Mm-hmm.
and this isn't what actually happened.
That's
But they're
crazy.
saying it in this book as something else. And I've always took that in like with heavy heart
Yeah,
because that's huge. Like
that's
I can't imagine
insane.
being at an event, reading about it the next day and seeing that it's not
It's been
what they're
portrayed
saying.
wrongly.
And what do you do? Like they have a bigger voice than we do. So we can't actually say like, "Hey, this isn't what happened" on a bigger scale that they can.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
so crazy. We're just at this huge battle of like what to believe right
Mm-hmm.
now. And it's insane to me that you told me that your grandpa experienced certain events in your history books, and he's saying that's not what happened.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I've heard several old people say that. Like, not
Mm-hmm.
sorry, old people, but
Yeah.
like people that experience, those historical events, and they're saying that's not the way it happens.
And if they
That's
can get away
crazy.
with it on a small scale as far as our education system, that almost creates a way for them to mimic or say what they want and push what they want in our books, in our
It's
media.
kind of like the Mandela effect. Like
Mm-hmm.
when that lady went crazy on TikTok, I think it was on TikTok,
It
and
was.
she like dug through her whole closet to prove the fact that there was in fact a cornucopia on the Fruit of the
I
Loom
knew you were
logo.
gonna say that.
Yeah,
I
dude,
knew
that's
it.
that's that thing
That
that
was
blew
crazy.
up.
Yeah.
I knew that was happening already. I think we all knew it was happening already, but none of us had proof. And this lady, this God sent angel lady, found proof, and they tried. They even, I saw that she was like going crazy and saying that I promised there was a cornucopia, and they even tried to shoot her down. They released an image of all their logos over the years that they've existed, and none of them had a cornucopia. And even after they tried to disprove her, and she still found a t-shirt with the cornucopia on it and disproved them. And that has been, where did that story go?
I
Why was that not on the
I haven't heard
news?
that in a while.
That's crazy. Like, it's like stuff like that just gets pushed down and hushed, and we forget that that people are literally trying to manipulate history and lie to us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I don't know, this is like a pretty wide believed conspiracy, but maybe you haven't heard it. That the reason they're doing that, and the reason they're changing small little brands and stuff like that, little colors or pieces of a brand, it's to see how much they can manipulate the viewers and the consumers.
Interesting.
It's to see how much they can change history
Mm-hmm.
and how much we'll allow it. It's a social experiment.
Yep. The
Bottom
dog
line.
chain analogy.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
if you
If they
really
can
think about
convince
it,
us that we didn't see something we thought we saw, oh wow, like
yeah.
it's just, I get angry. Like, this
Oh,
shit makes me fiery.
yeah, it really does. I can only imagine. And, really just getting into the next topic because it does pertain to this as well
Yeah.
is homelessness and what the government can do when we can't afford our bills.
Mm-hmm.
If we can't afford to live somewhere. So in March, actually March 20th, Florida banned homelessness and basically they could ticket and or arrest anybody that
And
was
fine,
homeless
right?
and fine as well, absolutely, which is crazy because they don't have money or else they would have a home.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let me find the homeless person that didn't have money for somewhere to stay or to eat.
Crazy.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Also, I think it said even if all the homeless shelters are full, even if there's no capacity anywhere, they can still
They
arrest
still
and jail
arrest.
and fine these people.
Absolutely. I
Wow.
know. It's eye opening, honestly. And on another even eye opening thing, nationally, the Supreme Court, Grant Pass versus Johnson, June 28th, they also said that on a national level, they can arrest
And this is ruled.
anybody that is unsheltered,
Even at capacity.
even at
For the
capacity
prisons.
on homeless shelters.
So now it's nationally ruled.
Nationally
I don't think
ruled.
I've ever seen a law get passed faster in the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
How come there'll be laws that sit there forever and that they don't care about it or they don't get around to, but like that law got passed in like a couple of months. That homelessness is now a crime. They've criminalized homelessness. And that leads me to something else I've been researching this week. Just to start off what I'm about to lead into. Since 1970, the US prison population has grown 728.9%. The US population has grown 161% since 1970. So just think about that for a second. The US population, people moving to the US since 1970, has only grown 161%, but the people who are already here have been moving into the prisons, and that has gone up 730%.
Wow.
This is from sentencingproject.org. And that is unbelievable. And that brings me to my quote unquote conspiracy, if you want to call it. I don't even think I have to say conspiracy in these pods, but I don't even like calling them that because I just think it's gonna happen, you know? I guess that's what a conspiracy is, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
But my conspiracy is that, like I said with the dog chain link thing, they're gonna continue to remove freedom. They're going to continue to take things that are, just immoral, like that are just like arresting homeless people is one of the first signs of just all the things they're going to do. I really believe that they're going to continue to implement insane laws like this, that they are going to continue to grow the prison population as much as possible, because let me remind you that slavery was never abolished in America. We just love to rebrand it. So we love to just rebrand things. And speaking of rebranding, I think they changed the name for Project 2025, right?
Yeah, Agenda 43.
Agenda 43. Don't be fooled. It's the same thing.
Absolutely.
Agenda 43 and Project 2025, sorry, are the same exact thing, and they've changed the name now because of the bad publicity it's been getting. And that being a prime example of how America just likes to rebrand shit, and slavery being one of them. Yep. My conspiracy, quote unquote, is that they're going to fill these prisons until there's more people in prison than there is living free, and then we're going to have slavery again, because there's a loophole in amendment, let me fact check myself, I'm not trying to get blasted for saying something wrong. The 13th Amendment states that neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for a crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. And Congress has the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. Let me remind you that the 13th Amendment is in fact a loophole that our country will use to once again implement slavery, because slavery is not allowed unless you are a crime, the word? Unless you are unless you're serving as a punishment for a crime. And just think about the way that, like I just said, the way prison, what's the word? Filling, like them going into prison?
Yeah.
What's that called?
Mass imprisonment.
Population.
The
way that I just said, prison population has gone up 730%, and that 13th Amendment, just keep that stuff in mind, because
that is crazy. And
is
just going into further, we also see that they're using prison workers for actual labor in the companies.
No, yeah.
I think it's McDonald's, Walmart, and Cargill
are like the top
Cargill.
three.
Sorry, excuse me.
They're like the top three biggest for prison labor. There's tons of companies that use prison labor, by the way. Free work, by the way.
Free work.
You're just lining the pockets of those owners of those companies at the expense of prison labor. Mind you, some of those sentences are wrongfully convicted, are maybe just for a bag of weed, stuff like that. Now homelessness.
Add that to the pile. But even on a crazier scale is if they refuse to do the work by any means, They get sent to solitary confinement,
I hate it here.
or they can get fined on top of the fines that they're already facing for what put them in prison. So they basically have little to no choice on doing this work.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's a lot. That's a
it
lot.
is definitely a lot to take in, and these topics are,
I just
we're hitting heavy this episode.
because
Absolutely.
the reason being, not because we want to come on here and rant, the reason being we need y'all to wake up. This is the way they've designed it to be, and if you've fallen victim to it, you've just unfortunately fallen to the scheme
Hmm.
that they planned, that they so meticulously planned, intelligently planned, and we really just we need to be like, oh my gosh, let me see this for what it is.
Absolutely. And I don't know if you really know much about this, but there's this thing called indentured servitude. And basically, what that was when they were coming over to America initially, you had to work a certain amount of hours free of cost. So you weren't getting paid for this work, but in turn, you were given a plot of land and you were able to be in the country. So just bear with me here. You come to the country, you settle, you think you're like coming over for like a fresh new start, right? You get here, you have to do a certain amount of work before you're able to actually live in the country. And I don't know if that sounds familiar, but um well, yeah. So if you think about our work and working for the dollar, working as a citizen, it's the same concept, just rebranded. And we see this on so many different levels as far as citizens go. We work for a dollar. We use that dollar for goods and services. We use that dollar for shelter. We use that dollar
To survive.
for to survival, absolutely. And then that leaves us with not much else to work with, you know?
Yeah, it's exactly like I already felt like we're a slave to the dollar, like
Yeah.
not only are we a slave to the dollar and they've achieved that, but now they want full free labor. Not only do they want to control us on low labor anymore, they actually want it for free because greed. That's just nothing's ever enough.
Hmm. They're getting free labor from people that are being imprisoned, like you said, maybe falsely,
Yeah,
maybe for something small. They're getting free labor out of that. They're also getting low income labor because they're not paying us what they should be paying us on the rate that
and
we're seeing inflation, the rate we're seeing things rise in
and
markets,
charging us unjustly.
and charging us unjustly. Rent prices are through the roof, food prices are through the roof. Why aren't our wages through the roof to match that same energy that our prices of goods and services are going through?
Do not forget who your country was when we started because we
Mm.
have not changed. It looks like we've changed, but we really have just rebranded a lot of shit.
And our founding fathers were petrified. If they were alive today, they'd be petrified at the level of our government and the
Yeah.
level of which they control everything. The Leviathan, Hobbes and Locke, those theories are still staples in a society today, and the government has just really become the Leviathan and that story of a sea monster controlling everything, and that's our government. And if we don't really take a stance, if we don't really use our voices and use our platforms to convey messages, to really say what we want to each other and say and remove censorship and push our notions and come together as a community, we will lose sight and we will continue to give them more power.
Yeah, and we just keep heading more closer and closer every day. American citizens used to riot in the streets over 2% tax increases.
Hmm.
And now we just let anything fly. We just see it on our phones. We're like, oh, what are we going to do? Like,
I am so happy that you brought that up because what you're referring to is called the Boston Massacre.
okay.
And I mean that was around the same time as the tea thing as well, and that was probably on a small, like on one of the first things we see in the media was they blew that so out of proportion. They call it the Boston Massacre, and you would have to fact check me on this, but I think only one person really died, and they made it seem in
They
the
blew
media
it
that
up.
so many people died.
That's what they do.
We talk about this unity, we talk about being mentally sound, and being in touch with everything that's going on in this society, we also have to take a step back and realize that a lot of our mental health plays a huge factor
Directly correlates.
into a lot of these
Yep.
topics. And if we're all strong mind and strong body, we will continue to have a better lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and just getting into our first mental health topic, I really wanted to cover gym and fitness.
Mm-hmm. Body
And
healthy,
of
healthy,
course,
healthy. Sorry, I said that wrong. Like healthy mind, healthy body.
healthy, yeah, strong mind, strong body.
Mm-hmm.
And that is going to be key. And I really want to
Absolutely.
talk about our experiences when it comes to the gym. And growing up, my family is, and especially my mom, has really pushed on me that, gym and exercise really allow us to not only be strong with lifting and strong with our mentality, but it just creates a healthy atmosphere for our thoughts, for how we take on day-to-day activities,
Mm-hmm.
for how we handle everyday life
Yeah.
things and our
Exercise
routine.
and sorry, my bad.
You're good. No worries.
Like movement is huge for processing. Something I'm realizing, something I'm kind of like working through right now in my life is that connection between physical health and mental health. I'm such an advocate for mental health, but I hate the gym. Like I hate fitness, and it doesn't have to be lifting and stuff, just as long as you're being active and moving your body, because movement is so key to processing, so key to in your healing journey, because our body has to process trauma and things we've gone through in our lives just as much as our mind does. Just as much as our brain has to process things and work through it, so does our body. Our nervous system will remember trauma from like our childhood that our brain won't even remember, but our nervous system still remembers it and acts accordingly. So
It's
I've
crazy that, sorry to cut you
go
off,
ahead.
but it's crazy that like the muscle memory of
Yeah,
the trauma, like we'll have
absolutely.
reflexes from certain traumatic experience that we had. Like we see that with loud noises. If something really affected you as a child with loud noises and you hear loud noise, you instinctively think to like cover or duck.
Yeah,
And it's really crazy how much the body holds as far as that goes.
absolutely. Yeah, really, it's a temple, I guess.
Yeah,
Um, but
I agree.
I've been tuning in a lot lately to Melissa Wood Tepperberg's podcast, the Move with Heart podcast.
Okay.
It's a really good podcast. She's a lot more like, really deep into that field and like has more of like a professional stance on things. It's a great podcast, and I realized from watching that podcast how not only important it is to move your body and work through general trauma by
Hmm.
working out and by exercise, but sexual trauma is a huge part of that, because sexual trauma happens to your body, and as much as it's traumatic for your mind and you've got to process that mentally and work through it mentally, I'm still kind of working through connecting my body and my mind and getting into exercise. Just to be raw and transparent here, I think that I'm still holding on to a lot of sexual trauma from my childhood, because I did experience SA as a child. I did experience a lot of bad, not just as a child, things that were really immoral and illegal, but just in general sex experiences. I do have a lot of sexual trauma. And I'm just realizing how important it is to put that into movement. I really need to be getting exercise and letting my body process, letting it move through me, as like Melissa would say on the podcast, letting that trauma move through you and really process physically, because your body doesn't forget the way that your mind does.
Yeah, it
And
does.
it's huge.
Hmm.
And I'm realizing how huge and important that is, and it's really eye opening for me.
Yeah.
I think a lot of women have experienced SA. A lot of people have experienced SA. My bad, but I think it's 1 in 3 women experience SA in their lifetimes. It might be higher at this point from last time I checked, but I hope not.
That's a scary number.
Yeah,
And thank you for sharing that. It's sharing, being transparent with your story as well.
and it's not just women though. I do want to highlight a lot of males do experience SA
Oh,
as well.
absolutely. Yeah.
Mhm.
No, I mean, yeah, we're all in agreement that anybody can experience SA, and it's a sad fact of reality. But if working out really does help the body and helps the mind, I think that our viewers and for pushing that message, like that'll help. And yeah, and using exercise as a focal point for healing
Yeah.
is
So life changing.
is life changing. And I hope that a lot of people can experience change and experience a way to start to begin to love themselves through working out,
Mm-hmm.
through exercise. And I think that that's a beautiful thing. I think when you're able to overcome something that you had no control over, that someone had overpowered you
Control
or
over you.
control over
Yeah.
you, and you could take back that control,
Absolutely. Yeah.
that's
That's a huge part.
that's inspiring
Like
me.
taking your body
Yeah,
back. Oh my gosh,
absolutely.
that's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you really break down the body and you really think, or you really look at what the exercises entail, why do we call it the core? When we're working out our core, the word core is it's the middle of our earth.
Yeah.
It's the core
The
of
center,
the
the
center. Yeah, it's what embodies us. And when we're working that out, that just makes total sense that we're able to overcome so much in the gym. Stress, anxiety, depression.
yeah. It really releases a lot of
It
things. And
does.
it sounds so minor, it sounds so stupid that just moving your muscles can make you feel so much better, but it's so true.
And on my personal experience, I would, especially in quarantine, was spending an unreasonable amount of time in my room, depressed, full of anxiety,
In the
uh,
dark,
in the
no
dark,
sunlight.
just playing video games. I really just needed that outlet of working out to release myself from that. And when I really found the gym and stopped using things to stop using video games to distract myself and instead used video games as a form of entertainment and something to
Or
do
like a
for fun
reward.
as a
Yeah.
reward from the gym, from performing, from working out, I became a very happier person.
Hmm.
And I don't want to use the word happy as like, oh, I'm happy, I'm
Like you're
full of
full.
joy. Yeah,
Yeah.
I felt like I was Dom.
Hmm.
That became my identity. It became something that I could latch on to that really pushed me to want to overcome other obstacles. When you start to create a healthy habit with the gym, it really helps your lifestyle. You don't have to go to the gym either. Like you can
Yeah.
join a soccer team, you could join tennis, like you were saying.
Yeah. Or just like,
You
yeah, go up to a
just
free
be
basketball
active.
court,
If you're
free.
living, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
If you're living an active lifestyle, you will feel and really grasp a more put together self. And I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, that is beautiful. I think you told me a lot when you were going through it. I saw you when you were really in the gym, and I saw you when you were out of it, and when you were focusing more on video games and staying in your room, and then also when you were focusing on that disciplined schedule of being in the gym, and it was night and day. Like
Mm-hmm.
literally, you are a different person when you're in the gym, and you get so depressed when you're just not being active. The moment you let activity out and laziness in is the moment depression starts to creep in. It's like
Mm-hmm.
almost immediate. Like as
Mm-hmm.
soon as you're not taking care of yourself and strengthening your body and strengthening yourself, depression creeps in like really quickly when you're inside all day
Yeah.
and not getting sunlight. And it's like we're like freaking plants. Like we
Yeah.
need water and sunlight. You really do have to take care of yourself. It's such a big part
Yeah.
of your mental health.
For
Like
sure. And I'm not a professional. I'm disclaimer, like I don't know what would work for everybody. I
mhm,
just know what works for myself. And that's why I'm saying that the gym and fitness really propelled me into not curing but not leaving space for depression and anxiety.
mhm,
It really, when I load my schedule, when I'm go go go, when I'm living an active lifestyle, it doesn't leave the space for me to
mhm,
sit there and really focus on depression and really look at things in a negative light.
mhm.
And I that's what I love, and that's why I overcame a lot of those things and overcame the feeling of being at rock bottom, was because I found what worked for me.
I want to be clear though that we don't mean distract yourself. We don't mean load your schedule to distract yourself from those things because this distraction will just lead to suppression and
Mm-hmm.
that will come up later.
Mm-hmm.
Exercise is a form of working through
Yes,
things, it's not a
a
distraction.
way to heal.
You have to find your form of processing,
Mm-hmm.
whether like I know a lot of people that have never gone to therapy, but they've always expressed themselves through songwriting or
Yep.
whatever it may be. You don't have to go to therapy, although it's highly recommended. It's a good thing. There are whatever works for you.
Mm-hmm.
If you need to write, if you need to do whatever you need to
Yeah,
do
for
to
sure.
process.
I 1,000% agree. And we discussed strong body, strong mind. And really just tying in this end of this episode, I really want to say that we also are going to be like adding our links,
Mm-hmm.
adding our email in the description.
Mm-hmm.
We really do want to hear from y'all.
Yeah.
We want to continue to hear more stories and the responses and the feedback like that drives
Huge.
us, that
Yeah.
keep that makes that tells us that we are sending the message that we want to send.
We're very excited. We plan on having interviews soon. We're going to bring
Mm.
more people on the pod. We're going to start up those groups that we were talking about. We're going to do like the live in-person stuff. So we're excited. We got a lot planned. Like he said, we're going to be linking everything in the description, all of our socials, our emails. We want you to reach out. We want to hear from you. We want to hear your stories. Send us a 10-page essay. We don't care.
Yep.
Like, tell us everything you want to tell us. Let us know what you hate. Let us know what you love. Let us know what you want to hear. We want to hear from you guys. We want to be connected deeply with you guys. So thank you so much for tuning in.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for tuning in.
We love you
We
guys.
love you. Bye.